All right, hey, welcome everybody. Appreciate everybody getting on. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you guys are calling from or logging in from. If you haven't met me, my name is John Abdou. I'm the high performance officer at USA Water Polo, going into my seventh year in the role, and really excited to be with you guys today and bring together our coach education team for the last several years that I'm really fired up about, in our coach education manager, Drew Clute, and our development national team coach, Ian Davidson, who has taken on a leadership role in our coach education as well. And so having the two of them as a team and the three of us working together on building up our coach education resources has been one of the more exciting things, honestly, to be working on at US Water Polo over the last several years together. And so this is our chance to dive into a subject that we're all intimate on right now, in the sense of how to navigate these times that we're in today, especially from this role as a coach. And as we're all, pools are opening up, high school seasons are starting, college seasons are starting, meaning in the sense at least of training. There may not be competition, but we're going to be certainly have access to training, and we want to get to that. So we want to dive into it, but first just want to kind of set the table for everybody before I hand it off to our team to get going. Just so everybody knows, we will be recording this, right? So a lot of people are asking if this will be recorded. I will record, and we'll be putting it on our High Performance Coach Education YouTube page, which if you haven't subscribed to that YouTube page yet, I highly recommend. That's different than the regular USA Water Polo YouTube page. So it's a page just with our resources on there, coach education resources on there, and I'll add that up, and then we'll be talking about the mobile coaching app where all this is housed here in a second as well. And so we will record, we will post if you want to share. We had 130 coaches register for the event. So we have 172 attendees right now, maybe 75. So there will be people kind of cruising in. It's a webinar. So in a webinar model, you guys are watching, and the way to participate would be through the Q&A. So if you guys have questions through this thing, you want to pop in something, there's a Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen there. If you have questions, I'll moderate the questions while Ian and Drew are going through the videos. I can either answer some of those questions in the middle, or I'll aggregate some of the more common ones at the end, and then we can address those there. So, please use the Q&A function in the webinar. And as people come in, we're just going to charge through this as we go. Like I said, there was 130 coaches who registered for this. In those 130 coaches who registered for it, all 11 zones were represented. And in those all 11 of those zones, 19 states are represented here as well as we do this. So never in my wildest dreams, or at least in my highest hopes, right, as we started doing all this stuff with coach education, that I think we'd be able to have this much reach across the country, right? And this is where the essence, we want to talk about how to train through COVID today, but the essence of what we're trying to do here is grow the sport of water polo and keep it going across the country and around the world. And for us to have 19 states, 130 coaches, all 11 zones, all 13 ODP zones for the ODP coaches out there. We got people in Hawaii, Great Lakes, Midwest, everywhere. Is really something that's inspiring for me, and should be for all of us as we see the sport continue to grow. And so I'm thrilled about that. The other segue I want to make too, as we talk about this, is as we get into the COVID training type or physically distant training, I really want us to take this and look at this from the lens of something that's incredibly positive for all of us, because from where I sit in managing the national teams and having to oversee the development of our sport and our athletes and our teams worldwide, generally speaking, whenever I've interviewed anyone from the past, our former national team coaches, former technical directors, people around the world, where people say the USA is deficient in terms of athlete development is consistently in our technical game, right? They will say that, and particularly our vertical game. They will say that the USA athletes are deficient in vertical game and technical skill training. And then the second thing they'll say is high-level game experience, right, that we're deficient in. So in this area as coaches, we have a direct impact today and through this COVID time period where we can impact that technical development training. And my hope is that when we get out of this, we have the most technically sound and technically proficient generation of athletes that this country has ever seen. we'll get that high level game experience that we need. We'll get out there, and maybe you saw, you know, a dozen of our men's athletes playing in Europe this fall during this time. They're going to get their game experience that way. Our women have been getting that same experience. But if we have a baseline generation that all can be proficiently sound in these technical skills, and we can do that during this time, that would be really amazing. And this is a wonderful time to focus on that. And I believe that in these kind of dark social times that we're living in, this is the renaissance that we are going to start experiencing here soon, right? And I really believe that we're in the middle of a kind of coach education renaissance and a coach development renaissance, and I really want us to focus on these technical skills as we go through it. And that's the theme of our ability to train during COVID, is a focus on the technical skills. So how you can follow along and see all these resources. We're not putting these resources up here now, and then you have to go fish for them later. So I want everyone to have these resources available in front of them as we speak. So last thing I'll do before I hand it off is I'll start sharing my screen, and I want everybody to, if you're at a computer, clearly you're not, this is not a regular Zoom call, you're not seen. So if you're, you probably have a web browser open, and I want everybody to go to USAWaterpolo.org. And if you can get there now, I'll start sharing my screen here, and I will take you guys through how to access and to get to some of these resources that we're talking about. All right. So if we're all on USAWaterpolo.org here, as you can see, and Drew and Ian, you can give me some signals if I'm missing anything here. You click over at programs, right? So when you go click over on programs, you'll see professional development and education. Click on professional development and education. Once you do that, you will see where it says mobile coach. You'll see a lot of things, including our coaching manual, which we're really proud of, which is a big part of the resources that are there. You'll see some strength and conditioning work that we have, but I would like you to click on mobile coach app. If you click on mobile coach app, there are you can click in the PDF instruction of step-by-step instructions on how to download the app. This mobile coaching app, all you really have to do, we've made it very simple. This is all brand new from the first, maybe some of you on here had the first version of the app. This is all new. All you have to do is search in the App Store on Android and iOS, the USA Water Polo mobile coach app. That should pop up, right? And when you pop that up, you can get the app on your phone. Now, outside of having the app on your phone or iPad, which is a great place to have it when you're on the pool deck, the best way to access it anywhere else is on your computer. So there's a web-based version of the app itself, and it looks like this. And what's easy about this is that all you need is your USA Water Polo membership ID number. You don't need to create a new login for any of this stuff. So whatever you use to log into your USA Water Polo account gets you into this. There's no new screen names or anything like that. So for example, if I log out of mine, right, you'll end up with a screen that looks like this. You pop in your membership ID number, right, whatever password you use to get into our website, you log right in. Takes you right back to these resources. And so all of this is housed here, and it's all housed behind keeping a current USA Water Polo membership. So in terms of sharing this content with your coaches and everything out, as long as your membership is active, you can access all these things. And so you'll see there's a myriad of resources in here that I encourage you to explore after the webinar today. Where we're going to spend a lot of time is in our coach resources page and videos page. So if I click here, I want you guys to see, you'll see where it says drills and skills is where Ian and Drew will spend a lot of the time in there, although again, much more information there. And one thing I want to highlight is that all of this is centered around our high performance model here in the USA. So about, again, when I started the job a little under 7 years ago, this is something I put together with Coach Riporian and myself, and kind of really think about how do we model a high performance gold medal winning team, and how does that then work from the top down, where everybody could be doing this, right? Where everybody within the microcosm of your high school team, the microcosm of your club team, the microcosm of your college team, we have coaches of all levels on this call today. How can you address these issues within this wheel? And then for us, in terms of a country and moving forward, you guys are at the center of this, meaning everybody who's developing the athletes on a day-to-day basis, the clubs, high schools, colleges. If you're doing all this and you're addressing these issues, then inevitably the athletes, when they reach to the top, will have these skills and the skill set needed to compete at a high level. what we communicate a lot through this, and Drew and I had a long talk about this as well, that you can find on YouTube, is that with Coach Krikorian, is that you can address every one of these at a very minimal cost. So this does not cost you thousands and thousands of dollars to have a high performance model, right? Clearly at the highest levels, we will invest more money, right? But it does not cost a lot of money to have great nutritional resources for your athletes, to address sports psychology, to now where we're going to start talking about the technical and tactical training here, where you're getting it for free with these videos and you're able to show your athletes and have the knowledge to train them. All of this can be done in an affordable way to get it out to everybody out there. So I want you to know that everything you're seeing today is coming from the top down, and we want to get this out into the masses everywhere we can, so that we're all training technically sound athletes here in the States, and we can continue to be competitive both domestically and internationally. And so again, hopefully now you're logged onto the website, you've used your USA Water Polo membership to log in on the website. Maybe later, if you haven't downloaded the app yet, you can download the app, and you can have access to all of these things as we keep going here. So very excited to start moving into what the COVID section would be. Again, this technical training. And so again, kudos to Drew and Ian for what they put together. I'll hand this over to Ian now for the opportunity to share a lot of the videos and things that we have been filming and dissecting during this time. And I hope that we all use this time to train our athletes in the most innovative and really necessary and relevant ways in this technically sound time. And so thank you guys for coming. Ian, over to you, my friend.
Thanks, John. Super excited to be able to get the chance to kind of go through this and do this. As we run through the videos today, we'll kind of run through them in a phase 1 through phase 4, 5 phases manner, which is very similar to the way most areas are kind of dealing with what they are and are not allowed to do based on what's going on in your area. So we're running basically through, 1 or 2 people per lane without being able to share equipment, all the way up to lane lines not being in, still staying physically distant from each other, but being able to be in a space that they can operate without lane lines in. Through the app as well, in all of the videos that we'll go through and that you can go through later on, there are a myriad of drills going and spanning all of those sections as well. So whatever phase you guys are in back home, there is a resource for you to kind of look at how you can run through a skill or work through a skill. And as we designed these and went through them, we built them to build one on top of each other, right? So knowing that we were hopefully moving from one phase to the next over time, with the end in mind, knowing that we could work on things at a time when we could not share equipment and had limited abilities to do certain things, to then allow us to be better at those skills once we did have an opportunity to get lane lines out of the pool, or to be able to share a little bit more space as well. The pools that we're using are 12 lane and 20 lane pools for all of these examples here. And so for us in California, we're basically allowed, or in Southern California, we're basically allowed on average about 2 per lane, right? Some change a little bit based off if you're swimming or different allowances, but the pools that we're using are all based off allowing essentially 2 per lane in that pool. So the pools are 24 athletes and 36 athletes that we're talking about using and for a 12 lane and for a 20 lane pool. So we'll jump right into here. This is the physical distance area. And one of the things too that you'll see, there's still a few in the root videos that are called socially distanced. One of the things that we as coaches have kind of been talking about, it's kind of been initiated by our mental skills coach, Brian Alexander, has been really trying to shift the thinking away from social distancing when we're talking about these things and more have it be physically distancing, especially the longer and longer these times go. Athletes are still allowed to socially communicate and interact here, and we'll talk a little bit more about that near the end. But this is, for many of these kids, even going back to school, the water polo practice or the swim team practice that they're getting in is the only chance for them to interact with another human being outside of their family group on a day-to-day basis that's not through Zoom. So the opportunity here to just physically distance and not necessarily socially separate is kind of an important differentiation that we want to be making moving forward with all of this. So we'll start in the ball skills. And I know a lot of times when we think ball skills, we think of just maybe like faking and different movements here. These are essentially physically distanced things that you can do with a ball and you're not sharing equipment, right? And so again, this is your very early phases of being able to and be allowed to get back in the pool here. Just some unique ways that we kind of came up with being able to keep our athletes engaged. So we'll kind of go through it 3 times here. We'll go through all the videos 3 times. I know sometimes we do a lag as well. So essentially this is toss the ball about 4 or 5 meters in front of us, sprint to go get to it, and then go ahead and spider all the way around it as well. There's varying levels. This is a 12 and under practice right here. So these are 10, 11, and 12-year-olds doing these skills. Chasing, go get it. Obviously there's different speeds that are happening right now that they're doing this at, and you can choose how aggressive, I guess, you are in keeping your athletes to task on these, right? Are you just kind of moving through them to move them? Are you trying to really get some really deep training going on in them? How much rest are you kind of leaving in between? And then at the end, they switch their hips, kick the ball to themselves, and then throw it. So now they're actually also using some over your hip skills, engaging their core, some fun hand-eye coordination of getting a chance to kick a ball to their hand. I know for my kids, it was a lot of them. It's the first time they've ever been allowed to kick the ball to themselves in a practice. So it was pretty novel for them that they got a chance to actually do that one there.
Yeah, and I think with the 12 and under age group, making it fun's a priority, but also just starting to introduce elements of developing athleticism and getting them comfortable moving in the water, going from a horizontal to a vertical to shifting their legs out in front of them, and all these things that I think we structure a little more purely with the older age groups. And they, the 12 and unders benefit from everything kind of being game-like. So honing in on those kind of things with those younger age groups are important.
Yeah, and I think as we kind of go through these here, you'll see, especially in the individual times, there's a lot of differentiation and variation for the athletes. And at some point, they're going to get bored, right, of just swimming up and down or just doing the same skills. As always, I challenged myself for all summer to never give the same drill 2 days in a row to try to see how creative we could be, because we didn't know how long we were going to have to be in singular lanes. So I was really worried about the athletes being becoming bored at some point without the prospect of moving forward. So one of the ways that we really found was fun for the athletes to stay engaged is this kind of like chase and go get it mode here, where they're throwing the ball off the wall and doing different things to go get the ball here. Again, this is a throw and go drift and go get it. And they're going on the left side and the right side of the ball, and then they're getting it, and then they're sprinting back to it. This is 14 unders, and as you can see, there's some differing levels of execution as we're going through this. This is near the end of our summer, so we were already allowed to be in bigger spaces together and not have lane lines in front of us. So this was more of a training mode for them, less worried about the exact technical portions of it and doing it exactly right, and more just kind of getting reps. So you can clearly see some physical breakdowns in what they're doing. But again, having an idea of why you're doing the certain things that you're doing here. I wasn't that worried about them not being absolutely perfect, because we were just kind of doing some reps and interval training and all of this here.
I think drills like this are great because you can just build off them into infinite number of things. You can make circuit training out of them. You can build in more skills. You can build in vertical stuff. And it's great. I think you mentioned a second ago, Ian, that idea of like dynamic training, right? Versus like repetitive, singular, focusing on one skill, like a wall drill or something like that. And I think again, in these times where we're so limited, or there's limiting factors around us of what we can and can't do and train, being able to allow them to have fun and train in that dynamic environment is key.
Definitely. So here's another one. Again, just kind of that same mode of training here. Stepping over their hips and closing out, rebalancing on their hands. They're going to go hit the ball they threw, and then they're kind of going through some different movements, coming back, running away with their left hand to their right hand, just kind of finding some different ways for them to go through skills that we've been working on in different fashions, right? And I've really liked linking these skills together. We started at the beginning of the summer doing them very individually, but then giving them a chance to do more than one is keeping them really, really engaged, challenging them in a lot of multi-planar movements here, which is what we're all doing when we're playing water polo, right? Being in multiple planes, horizontally, vertically, and moving through the water. So again, don't be limited by the ways that you've always done things when you're looking at these. Don't be limited in trying to feel like you have to do only offensive drills together, only defensive drills together. Always kind of finding some different ways to think about them.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind while you're looking through all these videos, we're just going to try to highlight a few of them. There's a ton of them, right? We are looking at over 50 videos in total on the app. You're in the 75, 85 range, even higher, closer to 100, right? That we're going on this thing. So we have a lot of videos that are on there. I know another question I've been asked in the Q&A here is whether or not your athletes can access this. So anybody with any USA Water Polo membership can access these videos. So if you want your athletes to go home, watch, come back the next day and know the drills they're running, or have them watch on an iPad before they jump in the pool, is another thing that people have done. Know that everybody has access to these things as long as with any current membership. And so, this is a good thing to continue to kind of vary what you're doing. And there's a lot of variety here. We're just highlighting a few.
Definitely. And we're actually, I believe we're at 120 videos now on this, and we'll drop another 30 in the next update by the end of next week. So we're going to keep trying to add more content, trying to find some more creative things. And frankly, if you guys come up with some creative stuff, please send it in to us. And, we'd love to go ahead and check it out and possibly highlight it on here as well, depending on what it is. So again, thinking of things that we feel like we are unable to do, right? So obviously having to stay physically distant, things that create contact are places that we automatically turn off or close the door to our brain. And so, and trying to figure out different ways that we can work on fouling and recovering and getting over our hips here. I'll show you a little combo that we've been working on, combo complex. And essentially it's 3 forms of fouling and dropping here. We've got fouling and jumping back to center, just to kind of recover in the zone. We've got fouling and jumping back with a blocking hand, preparing for the shot. And then we've also got fouling and just jumping back with kind of like a lazy hand, with that hand kind of safely allowing your goalie to think you're covering it, but feeling really like that shooter's never going to take the shot. And again, this is a combined movement here. It's 3 different drills that we built on and worked on and allowed the athletes to kind of work through and be creative. And I think one of the important things that we're always telling our athletes is that you should always be looking to kind of like draw an image or paint a picture with the way that you're playing or what you're doing. So you should be able to kind of figure out, or we as coaches should be able to figure out exactly what is going on in the athlete's head, what scenario, based off how they're going through these drills. And that kind of is keeping them a little bit more engaged, allowing them to be a little bit more creative with what they're doing here. And then it allows us to insert ourselves into some conversations and open up to have more dialogue in what our athletes are doing, and give us some more coaching points. Whereas like, hey, it looks to me like the story you're telling is this. Is that the story that you're actually trying to tell right now? And then, they can say, yes, that's 100% right. Or no, I was trying to do this. And then that gives you that built-in coaching point to go, hey, I would change it then this way, or I would look at maybe offering this part. That gives you All right, we're going to jump into some driving stuff now. All right, so thinking about drive offense here, clearly not going to contact still. So thinking in reverse about some skills that we value and how we can kind of teach them. And again, this brings up the imagination portion. This brings up engaging their brain a little bit more, engaging some of that creativity side of them to paint that picture of what's happening without an actual defender in front of them, and go through scenarios where they're thinking in threes. I do this, so the defender in front of me does this, so that I can then attack them in this way. And again, their brain has to work through it, and they have to show us as coaches exactly what they're doing through those movements, and we should be able to tell exactly what scenario is that they're setting up. So this is an inside movement to a ball side scoop and roll and seal. And there's a few varying ways of it happening here. In the front, just an inside slide with their left hand and a scoop and a roll. So she's probably already in inside position. And I actually asked her after the sequence if that's what she was doing. And then there's just to her right is a nice little ball side move to a roll in and seal, creating a little bit more contact, and then a really nice little shin off there to catch and score here.
I think one thing that would be good, I don't know if you did this, Ian, when you drilled, but to build on this, as you're transitioning down counterattack, you can do little setup moves, right? If you're coming down the gut of the pool, you can like take one or two strokes if the ball's on your right, to your left, and then cross over and set them up ball side into your scoop and roll and seal. And you can, again, kind of with that theme of telling the story, and you can give them a scenario as a coach and then say, okay, go tell the story and fill in the rest, right? Paint the picture. The defender's here, you do the rest, and they have that freedom to kind of incorporate a handful of other things that you've been working on in that given scenario,
Absolutely. And I think the scaffolding of all of this becomes really important too, right? We do have this time. We have this amazing opportunity that we've received, right? We get to spend this extra time working on these things. And so, yeah, starting with the end movements. And again, these are all combination movements here, but really breaking down the movements that you want to value and building on them all the way through. Just like you said, Drew, like in your warm up or different ways of skill work all the way through, and give them more areas of being creative. So again, this is a little jab move. Sounds like a basketball term, of course. And then a big movement vertically, something Tony used to do all the time. And then a big move around the outside. We call it a matrix. I'm sure everyone that's on here has probably seen this movie. I find very few of our athletes today have actually seen that movie. So it's kind of a term that it seems to be coming out of the normal lexicon here, but I still use it a lot. And again, just kind of jabbing, making a big move, stepping around him, and then stepping to score. This one's confusing to me, and that's kind of why I put it on here. So he's making a move from 2 here, but that looks to me like he's receiving the ball from his right side here, right? And so if he's making this move, he's making this move from 4, my apologies. Okay, but he seems to be receiving the ball from the wall, possibly, right? And so again, I don't think he's really thought out exactly the situation that's going on. And so this lends itself to a coaching point of, hey, you did the movement, which is awesome, but where are you in the game now? And if you can't find a way to visualize that portion, then we're just doing moves to make moves. And when we do have the opportunity to get back to playing and having more contact, right, this skill is still going to need to be bridged for this athlete to the next point. And that's why I really value these opportunities to coach them in these ways, where they have the freedom to do a skill and paint that picture for us as coaches so that we can coach them here. All right, so we'll jump into drive defense then, and again, things building on top of things. You know, there's a ton of individual movements as well. One that I'll highlight pretty quickly here is just some drive defense to wrap up defense in lanes. This is when we still kind of had to have people in lanes in these movements here, and these are drives from 4 or 2 that are going on. The one directly in front of us is a drive from 4, where she's giving water and getting over her hips, chasing the exit, and then wrapping back up to play defense. Again, it takes a little bit of imagination here, right? Obviously, this isn't the true distance from 4 to 5 or 2 to 1 as well, but it moves them through some of these sequences here. It gives you a chance, again, to ask what picture they're painting and arrive to it, and then really kind of figure out those next coaching points as well.
And you know, watching your girls or your athletes train with lanes is cool, because I think a struggle that I have sometimes with athletes, we're blessed where I work and where I coach, we have a lot of water, and athletes use the water. But in a game, you don't have that real estate around you. And so getting them used to physically behaving in small and making quick decisions and movements in small spaces is important. You can't drive, you know, clear, you know, 15 feet or 12 feet that way because there's 2 other players that way. You have just this little box of pool space. And so those lane lines are kind of cool, because you can set up little confined spaces for them to have to function and still be able to get off a move or do something in that space. Otherwise they run into the lane line.
Definitely. And I think it's really natural for coaches in general, for us all, to kind of start crossing things off the list, right? Like, we can't do this because we're in lanes. In lanes, we swim, right? And so I challenge everyone to kind of think out the box and not let this be the limiting factor to us. You know, as we're going to talk here about off-ball drive defense, a lot of us, if we're talking about being in a press, we'll start with a hand on the person that we're guarding, right? And so innately already, whether there's contact or we'll be closer than 6 feet. And all of our athletes are smart, not just my athletes that I work with, but every athlete that we're working with. These kids are really smart, right? And so once they learn and understand the limitations to what they're doing, they still want to be successful, right? They still want to compete. They still want to win the drill or whatever they're working on. They still want to be the best that they can be. So keep challenging yourself in drills that you do normally, or thinking outside the box, to come up with new skills, new ways of working on things, and then put some restrictions on it. So like with drive defense, this is a drill that we actually do a lot normally in our program. So we have a passer. It's a 3-person drill right here. We've got a passer at 4 or 5. We've got a driver at 2, and we've got an off-ball drive defense player at X2. And so we do this a lot in front of cages, in space, whatever it is, and making sure that we can just kind of isolate these movements and put a lot of focus on reading them and working. Now, clearly, to take ball side in this situation and go to contact is really hard. It would take way too much space. It's pretty much impossible for us to maintain physical distancing, in this situation. So we have to put a few parameters on it. So as we put some parameters on this here, we basically just said that you had to go backside, you had to go defended side in your attack. And then the problem we came up with was, okay, when do we know when to counter spin, or when do you know when to pull your hip out and continue to play defense? And so we had conversations with our athletes and our coaches about like the little points that we're looking for in all of these as we're working. So while we can't truly here, and I'll play the video in a second, while we can't truly be worried about the defender taking our back in this moment, we can recognize when the offensive player is close to our shoulder, right? And when that player is close to their shoulder, our shoulder on defense, they will most likely be trying to take our back, right? And so if they're trying to take our back, they're going to make a swim move, or what we would call a matrix in our program move, behind to try to take that. So we're visually engaging and watching for that matrix move here, okay? And then as that matrix move is made, we're counter spinning or making our hip, pulling our hip back out. Okay. And then as they're exiting the box, we would normally connect with them physically, grab a little bit of suit or grab a little bit of an arm and swim with them. Now, clearly we can't do that here. So the game we played was, if the ball goes, you can play the ball, awesome. If the ball goes directly over your head, then you did a great job of this. And if the ball doesn't go over your head, then you found a way to not be in a perfect lane. So here he goes, drive, she pulls her hip out. And so right here, you can see that there's a straight line that goes from the ball to the player that's attacking here, and the defender is not in that passing lane, right? And so for us, that would be a big no-no, that you're not in that lane. And so we would define this rep right here as an unsuccessful rep. Here, she's too low, and so she is in a safer position, but this ball can go directly to the shooter's hand, and they could go ahead and get a clean shot off in this situation. And she knows, which is why she's not turning around and looking at where the ball went. She knows that that's an unsuccessful rep, so that's why she's kind of looking back and go, okay, I want to get to the next rep already because I know I didn't do a great job of that one. And then you'll see in the next video here, this is a really good example. It's high school boys here. This passer is at 5, so he's in a lower lane. And he does happen to get a hand on this ball here, but we would also define it as success with that ball kind of going over his hand. Now, I get that this is me probably going down a little bit of a rabbit hole with all of this, as I know some of us are prone to do. But again, I would challenge you to figure out more ways to not limit yourself in doing certain drills so that you can still make sure your athletes are getting better in every single phase of the game. So the next portion here, and obviously we've gotten into some combination drills already, right? We're talking about having a defender, having an offensive player, being able to share equipment at this point. And so what I kind of call combo drills will come in here next. And so these are just centers and attackers working. For us, we actually had a moment about 2 weeks where we were allowed to pass. But we were not allowed to pass with someone not in our lane. So we had a lane mate directly across from us, and that person was only allowed to pass with the person that was in that lane for those two in a lane. So that's where we kind of came up with these combo drills. So I guess you would say they happened prior to the drills that we did kind of before this. And these are actually something that we do normally with our high school team as well. But it's funny how you kind of forget in our club team, but you kind of forget when you are doing things based off what you're limited by. And so again, this is just some attacking right and left, attacking forward. The centers have different options of touching the ball, stepping to it again, back turning, forehand turning. They have different ways of attacking as well. Some of the attackers will attack backwards first, like they're leaving on a counterattack to get back on defense, and then recognizing that the offense is still playing. So again, differing ways of attacking and moving through all of these things. All right, we've just got 2 more here. We're adding more and more every day to the passing portion of it. And again, trying to just find some more unique ways of passing as well through all of these. So this is a 9-person passing drill because so for us, we're in pods of 12. And on this day, we had 3 kids missing. So we had 9 guys engaged in a passing drill here. Now, normally we do this as 7-person passing in a smaller area here. It really mimics 6-on-5 passing and movement, splitting and stunting between players and going from horizontal to vertical. Now, clearly they're a little bit more spread out than we would normally do in a normal time. But it's just enough space for them to see that, like, they can still play the ball in these vertical ways. They can still kind of stunt. And the game for the kids actually became, how close can I get it to the defense's hand without actually letting the defense make a play on the ball. So that was a game that they kind of played within themselves, of adding some extra challenge to what they were doing instead of just tossing the ball up super, super high. And in these two, like, you can even see there's an athlete up here that gets a little bit close, right? This all becomes a learning curve for our athletes. And we found amazing success with staying physically distanced with our athletes by starting at absolutely zero, right? With them starting with lanes in and really pounding in the importance of staying apart and being their own kind of check and balance system as well, to communicate about this, and knowing that we would be shut down if we found ways to break these rules. As I know, there have been some clubs that have been forcibly shut down, unfortunately, because of these things. So, we're going to be in places where we're going to get a little close, right? And explaining to our athletes the importance of it and helping them understand why it's important, I think, is also really, really important. But again, we don't need to just be in 2-person passing or 3-person passing if you're allowed to. This is engaging 9 kids all together at the same time. And so, if you have a program where you're one coach trying to work on 18 kids in the water at one time, and you trust your kids, you can go ahead and have 9 kids doing this drill and rotating through it, staying engaged for 7 to 8 minutes by themselves while you're focusing on another drill going on. And that's another way that you can kind of keep them engaged and moving.
Yeah, I think as we get closer to some of the last few videos that we're highlighting here, it's important to know that one of our overriding principles in coach education is that we're not trying to create robot coaches, right? So we're not asking you to just take this and then repeat it only, right? I think you're hearing Ian allude to this several times while he's talking, but the ability to take some of these things and create your own path here, especially in these really uncertain times. These are not specifically pipeline ODP drills. These are drills that, we have to find a way to do what you can with what you have in that area, and allowing for that creativity within the space that you've been allowed becomes really important, right? And then with the constructs that you've been allowed, right? So you have to know that this is asking you to draw up your own coaching playbook with some of these tools that we have here. And we really want everyone to have that authenticity that comes with coaching, which is a real big part of it. And so there are a lot more games and things here that we have on here, and highlight a couple more before we move on.
Devin, so here's our last one again. We can't scrimmage, right? No contact for us, so we're not allowed to scrimmage. So there's no way to scrimmage. Well, I cry no way, right? Like, what do we get to do, and how do we get to have this opportunity to still get up and down and make this a little bit more engaging for the kids? I can tell you, after an entire summer of physically distancing with these kids, and finally getting to a point where we felt like we could trust them in playing this game, the looks on their faces was insane. And the joy that they felt from just being able to swim up and down the pool and play some semblance and form of water polo this way was incredible. And frankly, we've played water polo in this way before in our programs, like working in zones where you're not allowed to have any contact. But the consequences of finding contact in those times are very different than the consequences of going to contact now. So the opportunity when it was taken away to then now be able to get up and down in some form was truly incredible for them. So we designed our own rules that went along with this based off of the perils and pitfalls that happen in the places that we kind of got into these dangerous areas of kids are getting within 6 feet and kids are no longer physically distancing when we're playing. So some of the rules that we have going along with this, and these will be also posted within the app, are if the ball goes in the water in the front court, it's an automatic turnover. So basically anything that would engage our athletes into a 50-50 challenge ball became an automatic turnover, because we're competitive. Every kid's competitive and they want to go get that ball, right? And that switch kind of goes on for them of, hey, like, I'm going to go get that. I know we're physically distancing, but I want to go get that ball so that I can go ahead and compete. And you can see here that some of them are swimming with the ball in the front court. Since I videoed this, we've actually taken that rule completely out as well, because we had some kids kind of throwing the ball a little too far away and guys feeling like they could challenge it as well, which put us into some precarious situations. And so just kind of eliminating that wet pass or that ball in the water in the front court made things really a lot simpler for the athletes to kind of deal with. You're allowed to drive. There's kind of a crease like there is in hockey that you can't go in. And so you can kind of see that the athletes are kind of giving up that crease throughout this. And then the other rule we use for defense is that you can kind of stunt in transition and stop for a little bit, possibly play a ball when it's in the air, maintaining 6 feet of distance, but you can't fully play defense until you get all the way back to this yellow cone that you guys can see across the pool. And that's at about 5.5 meters for us. And so now they're kind of recovering basically back to center, and then they're closing back out, and we're engaging in all of these movements here. And again, the learning curve for every athlete is different, every group, how creative they want to be, the best ways to attack it. But again, giving them that freedom to find that creativity, I think has been absolutely paramount in this. And frankly, we're finding ways to give our athletes time to spend in the vertical. And you know, Johnny alluded to it in the very beginning about how our country is generally seen as deficient in certain ways, and being deficient in the vertical game and being able to shoot and score is definitely one that I think comes up more often than not for us. And so this opportunity to not only shoot in the vertical and spend time, but also find ways to be creative has been absolutely paramount, and will be amazing to kind of watch coming out of all this for us.
Yeah, John.
Go ahead, Drew.
I was noticing some Q&A stuff and chat stuff, and it's stuff that's great. I think one was cool is adding voiceover to some of these videos, which I think is a great idea with teaching points. And so whoever said that, thank you. But I'd be curious to get into, I would take a little dive into some stuff that pool issue questions. You can't get into pools. You're just locked out of pools. How are we maintaining training? Things like that. If we could dive into that rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity to do that. And we'd be remiss to say that, you know, Ian, where he's filming these videos in San Diego, is very fortunate, right, to have the pools be open and have access to the water. And we know that access to water right now is a privilege. It always is, and then in times of COVID, it's even more pronounced, right? And so it's important that we recognize that. I think we have several good questions and good discussion around that, you know, which is, you know, what do you do if we don't have access to a pool? How do you manage your pods, right? How do you get to the point where you are sharing equipment? And I think those questions in general and addressing those has a lot to do with your specific facility and your county health orders. Just know that from the USA Water Pool perspective, we don't have authority on those things. So I mean, making sure that you can navigate through your districts and through your county health and through the facility managers, right? That's what's going to be allowed in there. When we've, you know, we send all club administrators protocols that can be helpful too, if you need things to share with your administrators. That's always something that we can work through as well. So we understand that. And again, I hope that you guys are safe and healthy. I'd like to address those three things specifically. So like let's start with one, pod training, Ian, since you did all this and you referenced the pods of 12, which seems to be the number in a lot of areas that they're coming down to. How did you manage those pods of 12, and how do you practice and plan the schedule of a practice, right? Maybe from start to finish in a different way than you normally would.
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's some general differences, right? And then there's some differences that I kind of incorporated as well. So the general differences are the fact that we, at least for us, we decided that our pod should be pretty equal, right? So at this time in the year, or when in the summertime, right, is generally the gear up and the finale, the crescendo for us in terms of the summer. And so you generally have all of your A, your B, your C, or whatever, however many teams you have or few teams you have, right? And you're trying to be your absolute best and preparing for Junior Olympics, you know, in the end of July and all these kind of things. And we kind of took a different approach when we created our pods, these stable pods of 12, and went, we're going to mix them up a little bit because we know that we're not preparing for something that's at the end of July, right? We're going to create a little bit more of a social aspect as well for our athletes. And we're going to pair them up with kids that get along, but also kids that can challenge themselves within those pods. So in a pod of 12 per se, maybe we were lucky enough, I'll use our 14s boys as an example. We had 3 teams in our 14s boys, an A, B, and a C team. And so we took about 3-4 kids from our A team and split them up between 3 pods. Then took about 3 kids from our B team and split them up in all 3 pods, and then 3 kids from our C team and split them up in all 3 pods. And so that kind of gave us 11 athletes right there, and then we added a goalie to each group as well for that. And so those stable pods, in their name, they stay together. They don't change. They don't cross with another group at all, and that's part of the parameters that we have to follow down here in San Diego, is that we're not allowed to cross those pods for any reasons whatsoever during our camp time. Once our camp ends, we're allowed to reset when we start a new session. So we're about to start a fall season. So our fall camp, and I realize I'm using the word camp, we're operating under camp guidelines right now. In California, we're not operating under youth sports. Youth sports is just starting to catch up, but as of right now, we're still operating summer camps for what everyone's doing down here. And so our new camp starts on Monday, and so we're shifting our pods and changing some things around because our new camp is beginning that way.
Yeah, and I could chime in real quick too. You know, we're in Orange County. I'm in Orange County, and even though Ian's just a 35-40 minute drive south of me, he's in another county with new rules, different rules. And so we've been shut down, and I know probably a lot of people on this call are maybe from Orange County in similar boats, and we can't get into pools, we can't do anything, which has been unfortunate. We started, though, this summer with pods under similar rules, though, that Ian's describing, and we took a little different approach. We mapped out, we knew we had 2-week increments where you could kind of switch pods or adjust. We were told we can move people in and out of pods after 2 weeks or so. And we started equal, and then we had like a couple different approaches with the idea that we were going to be able to do this all summer, and we got shut down after, I think, 2 weeks. But it was equal, and then it was by position. So all the attackers in one group, the centers, defenders in another group, are utility-ish players. And we'd be doing similar training, but then that allowed us to just hone in on certain, more specific stuff, goalies. And then swimming, we had a 2-week increment where we're going to focus on swim technique and swim training. So we broke it up pod that way.
Yeah, and I can also speak to what we're doing with our national teams right now, and that'll kind of segue into what some of the things we want to show you next. I mean, look, the bottom line is this is going to be different every county, every pool, right? Every place is going to be different. It's going to be really fluid, and what the goal of today and these videos is just to help you navigate this uncertain space, right? In an ideal world, in an ideal situation, we were addressing things differently. So I think flexibility and the ability to adapt, just like we teach our athletes their ability to adapt in the middle of a game, your adaptability as a coach and your ability to kind of flex your training plans and what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, I think is really important. For example, what we do with the senior women I've been doing in the city of Los Alamitos at our training base has been doing is create small groups. So within the pod of the whole entire team of 17 women, we've broken them into groups of about 4 or 5. And that regards also goes back to the social contract that they must be kind of living together and then, practicing behaving safely outside of the team interactions as well. But at no point are all 17 women in the pool at the same time or in the facility at the same time. So we've actually phased the timing off with them so that 4 or 5 come in at one point, 4 or 5 are in the weight room at one point, 4 or 5 are in the pool at another point, 4 or 5 in another dryland activity. And I've seen other coaches do this as well, so that there's a cycle going, right? So that within the pool, we stay to the limit of what we're needed in the pool. And then we're also able to hit other stages. It's basically like when we have done this in the past in coach education seminars, talk about station work, right? You create these stations that everybody can come in and, periodize the timing that comes off of those stations. Now, the question was also asked, well, what if I don't have access to a pool? You can create the type of that type of station work without the water work, unfortunately, right? If we don't have access to the water at one point, if you want to get your team physically distant but socially together, or then creating that opportunity of maybe some dryland workouts where they're physically apart, some film or video breakdown that you have as well, which can be done. Again, I realize that we're all experiencing Zoom fatigue at this point. And I've talked to a lot of coaches that have been chiming in and telling us how much all their weekly Zoom meetings for 5 months straight have gotten exhausting. And there's a lot of science behind that. We get that. So being able to create that same rolling out a TV or getting using screens, iPad screens or anything like that, where you can do that near other station work, where you can have some physically distant workout, is another technique that coaches have been using. And I think, you know, if you can continue to be creative and adapt in those times, I think that's what's most important. And we wish everybody, you know, the best access to pool as possible, but we know that that's not realistic. So that's what all these resources are about, you know. And so,
can we stay on that no pool thing?
Sure, please. Yeah.
You know, we have, of course, the video of all videos for dryland ball work. You know, Tomas Fargo video is up on the app, and that's just some fantastic stuff. Super old by now,
ball drills,
just timeless things. So you're doing ball drills. Natalie Benson, Fresno State coach, put together a year or so ago. It's up on the app as well. Some throwing technique things that are for dry land, where you're on a knee or you're sitting on your butt or you're on two knees and you're just throwing a ball, either a softball or a water polo ball against the wall. Yoga and stretching. You know, we have to be very flexible with our upper body, and being able, so much in our game is being able to separate our lower body from our upper body in whatever we're doing in the water, especially in the vertical game. John's talking about, you know, the struggles that we have just generally as developing athletes, and that's a huge part of it, flexibility. And so this is a great time to focus in on those things. And I think if I could just share real quick a few things that have been talked on a little bit, but like, this is a fantastic time to hone in, to do like a SWOT analysis of your entire program and overlay that and look at it through the frame of that high performance model. And John made reference to this in the very, very beginning, that you can get crazy with this stuff. The video analysis, breakdown, analytics stuff alone, Huddle and Sports, all these things, you could be spending thousands of dollars and put a lot of work on your plate to figure out how the heck to use it and maximize it, right? And it's very time consuming. But you don't have to go that route. You can still do every single part of that wheel inexpensively, or through just minimal fundraising. And that kind of helps holistically develop your program. But you have to do an analysis of your program to figure out where your weaknesses are, where those performance gaps are, and then put together a plan to close it. And I was talking with Ian yesterday morning in preparation for this call, and I was just reflecting on some of the stuff. The person I coach with at our high school, Brett, he and I were doing the same exact thing 4 or 5 months ago, trying to figure out, okay, you know, we can't do this, this, and this, right? Here are our restrictions, but how can we maximize what we can do and what we do have available? And we went through a similar process. And one example was, we weren't a slow team, but swimming technique wise, we just didn't feel we were very good with. And if this was a proper summer with no COVID, I don't think we might've had that thought, but I don't think we ever would have taken the time to commit to certain portions of our training to teach swim technique, flip turns, streamlines, things like this. We're trying to do timed swim tests, right? Well, they're not flip turning well, and they're not streamlining well. All these things matter, swimming efficiently. So we took time to do that. And that's going to make us better. And it's going to close performance gaps at some point in some way for us. You know, another thing is core values and team standards, like those kind of really important things. Sometimes, again, we get lost in preparation for games, club games. Ian was talking about JOs coming up and these types of things normally, and where our minds would be. And this is a great time to focus in on those things. So just real quick, I wanted to share, we have 5 core values for our program. One of our coaches, one of us took 2 of the core values, and then the other 3 of us took one of the others. And we created a 30 to 40 minute PowerPoint presentation for our boys through Zoom. And we had weekly Zoom calls, and we presented on the core value. And so mine was love. One of our core values is love. And so I talked about what does that look like on our team, and what is it, and how are we defining certain things, et cetera. And all that kind of built into bigger things that go into our team handbook and our culture of our program. But, you know, that's just one example of ways to, you know, I think we freak out so much about how we're going to find pool time and how we're going to do this in our pods and all that stuff's, of course, we need to be thinking about that. But I think if we allow ourselves to live too much in that frame of mind, we're not focusing on all the other stuff we can be doing, small group assignments in a Zoom. Like I said, the yoga and the stretching, those types of things. So I would just really encourage everyone to just, focus in on identifying performance gaps in your program, figuring out a way to close those performance gaps, and then doing the same thing as you as a coach as well. I don't want to take it too much of a deep dive, but just, do you have a coaching philosophy? Do you have kind of some core principles and core values of you as a human being who's leading and working with, athletes that are the age group that we work with? And what are your principles as an educator and as a teacher, as a coach? And define those things and look at how you can weave those in and out of how you function as a teacher, as a coach. So, and there's a ton of great books and resources and things like that. It's not as easy as, or as simple and as quick as that sounds, but now's the time to do those things.
Thanks, Drew. That's invaluable analysis. And I think two things you referenced that I'd love to clarify for everyone too is, one, you talked about that SWOT analysis, of your team. There's a great video on the app, on the YouTube page you can get to, of that Adam Krikorian, Coach Krikorian used that high performance model to identify those gaps and to address the team after the 2012 London Olympics, and then how that he would use that to then bridge and get ready for the 2016 Rio Games, according to what you're talking about. And I think it would be good, actually, probably helpful to define SWOT for everybody too. We got that question in the chat as well. Like, how would you define, how do you define that acronym SWOT? And briefly, and before we get to the next video.
Yeah, you're just identifying areas that you have strengths in as a program, and maybe why you're strong in that area. How do you maintain your strength in that area? Areas of weaknesses, okay, areas of deficits, and then those are kind of that performance gaps, right? Opportunities for growth, and then threats. Where are you? Are you one threat I think is very common right now is like just people not being engaged. How do you keep athletes engaged? That's a threat to the effectiveness of what we're trying to all do, right? Keep the train moving in a certain direction at a certain pace. And that's tricky. That's really hard. And I think diversifying, this sounds really corny and silly, but I mean, one thing that we would do periodically is I remember we would have a joke contest. As stupid as that sounds, we'd break up into little breakout groups. Every coach would have a group of kids, 5 kids, and we'd all share, and then we'd vote, and then we'd all go back to the main room, and then the top vote getter from the breakout rooms. And I think, look, the kids just want to see each other, and doing things like that kind of break up the monotony of being on Zoom calls and talking about core values or, whatever. Another thing I wanted to share too was diving off that specific question, but going back was, Brett did a really, really great job of, we would break down quarters of videos. And so we would do a lot of breaking down of international games you can find on YouTube. And we'd also break down some college games and break down maybe one of our high school games. Can't remember if we did a high school game or not, and we'd have a printout, a PDF that we'd email the kids ahead of time. And it was just like a classroom, and they'd have notes to take, and they'd have to submit the notes and essential questions and things like that. Both Brett and I are teachers by trade, so that's kind of where our minds are wired anyways. And that was really, really valuable. And one other thing I'd add on that end, I know I'm just kind of throwing a bunch of stuff out there, but reach out to resources. One cool thing was we had, we pulled 2 or 3 collegiate athletes. And one was like Paul Reynolds, Ryder Roberts was another one. And the 2 of them broke down one of their UCLA championship games, like a couple quarters of that game. And they were talking not about tactics, they were talking about mindset and preparation. And that was really specific because it was things that tied into our core values, things that tied into things that they were echoing things that we talk about in our program. So again, it wasn't just a random, let's get some, high-level athletes on there that the boys recognize and they just talk shop. We would get on a call with them prior, those people that we talked about, and say, okay, what are you going to talk about? What are your main teaching points? And then, hey, let's try to echo communication. Let's try to echo, this one part in the third quarter, you guys had a negative, you were on the bad end of a 3-0 run. How did you regroup? How did you, what was being talked about in the huddle? And I think one of the more valuable things about that was like one time the camera showed Adam Wright talking to Huddle with UCLA guys, and he was, I don't know, Ryder or Paul was talking about what they were talking about as athletes, and it wasn't anything tactics. It was just about, you know, remaining centered, getting back to some focus of something, right? But it wasn't like major tactical things. And it was really cool because we try to weave elements of that in our program and how we handle certain situations. And so it was cool to preach the same things, but from different angles, if that makes sense. I don't know. Went on a little bit of a tangent, but.
Yeah. Yeah, no, all really good stuff. I have the screen shared here too, so you can see that there's more of these. Some questions have come in about where these dry land drills can come in. Drew referenced some of those throwing drills and some dry land things that we could do, right? You can click on learn to throw. They also referenced where if you come in on here and learn to throw, there's all kinds of different work to be done there. There was also a reference to the Thomas Fargo video and the ball handling drills. You can find those in some of these the old school videos, ball handling skills of Thomas Fargo, right? As you see there, lots of stuff with some older videos that I think are wildly valuable. And again, I referenced this before about this being or having a lot to do with how we're just adapting to these times. We also have a set of videos, I'd be remiss to not mention this, that we have of our national team athletes demonstrating these same technical skills that we are we say that as nationally we are proficient or deficient at along the way. And so if you went into the ODP part of this, and I think everything we've talked about before here isn't necessarily ODP, right? But we have this in the background, and these things can be done in a physically distant way as well, right? So when you have only one athlete per lane, or only 6 lanes to work with, and you're only 4 athletes in at a time, and you have these like kind of small groups that you're working with. You can go on the app here on the website, go to ODP. Once you click on ODP, click on technical skills. And as you go through all these drills here, all of these I think are very valuable, and I'll only highlight a few of them. For example, we have these defensive movements. There's 2 different sets of defensive movement drills that we recorded with our women's national team. I've said this in a few different talks before. This should be your warm-up before games. These types of drills can be integrated into your warm-up, into what you're doing. So you're watching some of the best athlete in the world, right? Gold medal winning athletes demonstrating these skills along the way. And again, this can all be done in a physically distant manner. And you can work on this now. It can be integrated into your practice plans later. So we have this set of defensive movements 1 and 2, and you get to watch people like Kylie Nuschel, right? Maggie Steffens, Maddie Musselman, for some of the most technically profound athletes in the world, regardless of gender, region, whatever, right? The way they demonstrate these drills, their technical skills are really amazing. And so I would check those out, right? Again, can be done kind of in that way. Another good one to look at is another time for us if we want to become better shot blockers. And there's no better time to become a better shot blocker than right now as well. Taking advantage of that. If you, in your SWOT analysis, that's been one of your weaknesses in the past, and this is your time to get better at shot blocking. 3-part shot blocking series that again you can do physically distance apart, help your goalies out, all become better shot blockers. And in another way to address these, some people have asked what you do without the pool. It doesn't necessarily just have to be game film that you're breaking down, that you're watching. You can also break down the technical skills and try to work on them on dry land if you're away from that, right? You can work on shot blocking, hand positioning, elbow positioning, all on dry land without having access to a pool. Of course, ideally you would love to be in the pool, right? But if we're working in this and we're trying to do the best we can with what we have, I think these videos can be very helpful. Another skill that's come up, the last one I'll show on these ODP drills. Again, you can see Ian referenced over 100 videos here, several ODP videos with our national team athletes that you can see on there that I think we have to do a better job in America too, technically, to get better with our transition from egg beater to breaststroke, back to egg beater, our transition from horizontal to vertical, back to horizontal, and all those things. And a lot of that has to do with our ability to breaststroke quick, right? And to have quick and short, fast breaststroke kicks. It's a good video watching Luca here, right? Work on these short breaststroke kicks that we use to transition in the water back and forth from some of the drills that we're working on. And so as you have access to all those videos, you also have access to some other basic things. We talked about ODP. We have a whole new set of splash ball resources. If you're working on getting back in the water and you have all your splash ball groups back. I think that's important. We put all these resources into newsletters. I'll have Drew touch on that a little bit too, but all of our newsletters are archived here while I'm sharing the screen. You can go back and see, we send these out. Our next one will be out next week or so. We periodically set these up. So set your email so that that doesn't get sent into the spam box, or if you've missed it, you can always come back to the app and you'll find it in the app here, another place for you to be able to access it. And so we want to make sure that you have all this information and know that it's not just us. We become the aggregators of all this. We've highlighted several of our coaches who have helped contributed into these things that give back and are able to give us and share this wisdom that we want to use during this time. So just know that these resources are there for you. And again, any membership level gets us in. And so Drew, I'll kick it back to you, and then we can answer a few more questions as we go along here.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. The newsletter, it comes out quarterly, and one will come out next week. And they are housed there, so you can go back and look at archive ones. I've gotten a few text messages and emails about our coaching manual, and specifically about the links not working, some, all, part, whatever. And that we know that when we transferred over all the stuff to this app, we had to do some things on the back end with the videos, then that jacked up the links that were made on that manual, 2 years ago or something. So it's on our to-do list to go back through and then hyperlink all those things. So appreciate your patience. And also on our to-do list is to update certain chapters, one being on diversity, and highlighting certain, just growing that living, breathing manual, because that was the intent of that manual to begin with. I want to say 2 things. One, Coach Academy, it is happening this year. It won't look like it did in the past, obviously, but we're going to be doing a virtual online Coach Academy. And so way more information to come about that, but it's only August, and so we'll get the word out in October or so. But just to put that on your mind, and because it's an online virtual format, we're not limited to the amount of coaches usually that we're and costs too associated with pulling on and with doing this event. So it'll be less expensive, and it'll be open to way more coaches across the country. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. Again, kind of honing in on what Ian said, right? Like focusing on what we can do and the opportunities that present themselves during this time. I think there's some cool opportunities there with Coach Academy. And then the last thing I'll say about updates is just the app updates. Coach Flax, Brian Flax, is our youth national team coach. He silver medal group at the last World University Games. One of our country's, brightest young coaches. He's worked really, really hard to put together 3 videos, and it's the first of a couple series of videos in the next 18 months or so we'll release. And it's all on transition offense. There are 20-ish minute videos, 3 videos, and it's all on transition offense. So starting in the defense, getting into your counterattack, and then bleeding into your front court. And so we'll release those in October. Very excited. And then we're going to do similar to this, kind of a webinar Q&A with Coach Flax and maybe a few others. We don't know exactly how that'll look like, talking about transition offense into front court offense. So excited about that coming up. More information either through the Twitter app, newsletter, and then USA Water Polo stuff. And then the last is the whiteboard. There's a cool new feature being added onto our app. It's a whiteboard feature where you will be able to digitally create plays or drills or what have you, animate them, and then it saves as an MP4 on the app, and you can share that. If I create one, I can share it with Ian, and it gets housed in his little bank of drills, and vice versa. So some really cool things that are happening with the app, and the whiteboards being one of them. And then of course Ian's videos are up on there now, which has been, I just want to publicly thank Ian for doing this. He put together, man, I think the initial idea was like throw together like 20 videos of some drills, and then as Ian does, goes above and beyond. And I don't know how many videos it ended up being, but I really, really appreciate it, your time and effort with that.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, thank you, Ian, for what you've done. And I think a couple of things to mention, the things that Drew is talking about, all those updates to the app, everything, again, all those will just be included. And as you keep your memberships current, all those things will just be, you'll be able to access all those things as you get into the app. One thing we didn't dive deep into today is goalkeepers. One of the benefits of being a goalkeeper, I guess, during COVID time is that you're generally physically distant in the training anyway, right? And so the ability to have a cage and do lunges and be on your own, like if you're able to drop a goal or even without a goal, or be in a side as a goalkeeper and be able to do your lunges, your movements, your side to sides, all those things, all those kind of actually translate well to the physically distant training that is being allowed right now, or if you're allowed those things. And so we didn't want to spend a lot of time on that today, but know that there's some videos on there for that. We dropped into the chat from our ODP goalkeeper director some notes from Sean Nolan that can be helpful. And again, I think the beauty of that is that during these times, the goalkeepers who are generally always fortunate are more fortunate to be able to take care of those, be able to develop those skills and really develop their lateral movements and their leg strength in the context of a physically distant training much easier than the field players. And so keep that up and keep doing what you're doing. As we're wrapping up, if you have any last questions, feel free to fire them in. And so I'll answer a few more questions, but just know that we have all these resources available for you guys. And we're really excited that, again, 19 different states, every zone in the country, over 130 coaches initially signed up for this thing, and we'll archive it later, that we continue to grow the sport together and grow our technical skills as we go. Drew and Ian, you guys mentioned small groups. Coach Hurd from the Midwest asking about some of these small group assignments, maybe some examples for small group assignments that you can do during the COVID time or on deck in the physically distant training or remotely.
Yeah. So going back to like that video breakdown stuff. So what we would do is we would assign a quarter, and we wouldn't do this all the time because you can't do this every single week, right? But like 1 week out of a 5-week cycle or something, we would assign 1 quarter of like Greece and Spain or some game from a year or so ago. But we would pod them up into groups, and we would assign phases of the game of that 1 quarter to those groups. So one group of 5 or so athletes are going to watch that, and then they have to get on a Zoom call independently of all of us, and they got to talk about the offense of the both teams' offense, and that's only the thing they're honing in on. And then you just put together like a little bit of a guided question kind of template, like how effective do you think this was? Why? Identify certain 2 examples, and then make sure you say what minute in the video it is, so we can go to it and see. Just little things like that. I know some of you have asked for like templates of stuff, and you can always email me and I can shoot you over what we use, but they're really easy. Just put together 5 essential questions or just 5 kind of leading things. But then another group would do defense and 6-on-5, 5-on-6, etc. And then we would get on a Zoom call and then one kid of that group of 5, let's say, you peel off 1 kid from all the groups, and there are now a new pod and a Zoom sharing what their group came up with. Does that make sense? So one person sharing 6-on-5, another person from the 5-on-6 group is in that group and sharing 5-man, and etc. And then you have another template that maybe that they're taking notes on that you've created, and then they got to submit as an assignment or something. Just little creative ways like that to get them thinking, because going back to one of the areas that we struggle in, our guys, and I'm sure a lot of us do, is our guys just weren't very good thinkers of the game. They just kind of saw and reacted, as opposed to thinking and digesting and processing information. And so how could we close that gap, right? Well, what about getting them to practice honing in on and identifying things and digesting information, teaching them how to do those things. So this was one way that we did. We found it, to be successful. And I think the kids enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I think one quick reference there too, because I know this was different for when I was coaching high school 20 years ago. We would really have to fight to find a VHS or a DVD of a national team game, right? The plethora of games that are available online right now is amazing, right? So if Drew casually drops that, hey, we watched Greece versus Spain at this World Championships, that's available to all, right? These are resources that are free online. That everybody can find, even on even the regular USA Water Polo YouTube page has every USA game that we've hosted. We've hosted a ton of games in the last 10 years on domestic soil that we've archived and put on there. But being able to access the FINA World Championships, and they were just shown on the Olympic channel just last week. So in terms of just like equity and access, everybody has access to these games, and being able to then bring them to athletes that, even if your athletes don't have proper internet at home or access to these things at home, you can put these on tablets and be able to share them quickly. So just I think that's a really powerful thing that Drew just described, and being able to access these high level games and to do that, and to think that these athletes that we talked about being able to walk away, this being the most technically sound generation that we can develop during these COVID times, this could be also the smartest generation of athletes that we could ever have during these times, because they'll have time to study and watch these games more so than ever before. And so, imagine if at the end of this thing, we come out, we have technically proficient, intelligent athletes to continue, then ready for competition when the time comes. We're all going to be really fortunate, and that's our job as coaches, to be able to do so.
What's cool about, one of the cool things about this environment we've been thrusted into, is we talk all the time about, as coaches, we're teachers first. And then that's hard if that's not naturally you, or you're not a teacher by trade, and you're teaching 5 or 6 classes a day or something. It's hard to implement things and to grow in that area, because you don't get a lot of practice. If your main job is a not teaching job, you don't get a lot of practice to implement certain things, right? So take this time to read books on teaching, on education, right? Read books, coaching books by Bill Walsh or Bill Belichick, or things that not about water polo, but just high level coaches that are really good communicators and teachers. And then in this environment on Zoom, like I just described, create lesson plans and create ways to communicate information and get kids to communicate information between them. This is a great opportunity for you to grow, not just your athletes, but you to grow as an educator.
Yeah.
I like these Q&As. Just keep going. I got all day.
Yeah. If you guys got, we'll wrap up in about 5 minutes at 12:30. But if anybody wants to stick around, right, I can officially wrap up then. If anybody wants to stick around and keep talking, we can keep talking for sure. I think you make some great points, which also I think references the fact that these are available kind of widely and free to all USA Water Polo members. Would also want to make sure that everybody knows that, and give a shout out to guys like Coach Jack Coker and Maggie and Tony over at 6-8, and Wolf and Brad over at Cap 7, that have also created a lot of resources for everybody during this time frame. So we're certainly not here to claim that we're the only ones. We're just aggregating a lot of information, right, for us, and be able to connect it to the top, and connect to our Coach Corian and the senior teams and Dan and everybody that we can work on together. So keep also want to give everyone a shout out that during this renaissance, I think a lot of coach education is coming to the forefront, and to take advantage of those things during those times that Drew is talking about. We've created a few book lists. So if you go on the coaching manual, you find a lot of book references and recommendations that are there. And please go back and check those references as you see them. And there was also a Slack channel that was promoted by Steve Carrera for coaches to be communicating. I think it's a great place to kind of pop in and keep this conversation going in terms of any questions that can come out. And as I see a couple more questions come in, thanks, Rob. We know we got to go back and change some of these videos, right, from private to public, or to unlisted, whatever we need to do to get them in there. And so we'll make that happen. So happy to continue to answer more questions as they come in. I'll set you guys up with a few more questions, Drew and Ian, as you guys are doing this.
I will say to Coach Oaf, shout out to Central Valley, my Coach Oaf, The Score Takes Care of Itself by Bill Walsh. And I'll give you 3, Phil Jackson's 11 Rings, and Coach K, Gold Standard.
Yeah. And all of those are happening. You can see that above Coach Clute's right shoulder there, the Bill Walsh book. You can see. But those are all great resources. And we have a long list there. Ian, a question for you. What of all these physically distancing drills that you've been doing, what have been some of the ones that the athletes have reacted best to? What are their favorite ones? Along the way.
Yeah, I mean, the scrimmage one has been by far their favorite. But I think anything that doesn't fall in line with their quote unquote normal practices, right? So, like I said, I tried to create new drills every single day, or a new way to do something every single day. It was daunting for sure. But I know that I get stuck in ruts a lot, especially during our normal seasons, where we're doing the same drills over and over and over and over and over again. And so literally anything that was different for them, that combined a lot of multiplanar movements, I think were the absolute best things for them. So like even the throw and chase ones, we did a lot of stuff where we had to throw the ball over like to make some kind of a movement out to the flags and then throw it over the flags and catch it on the other side. Just things that are just generally things that they would never be doing in a practice normally, based off me just feeling like we don't have the time or it gets us too off track or whatever. Incorporating a little bit more of that play mentality in there, which is something that for me, I'm trying to work on all the time. Incorporating a little bit more of that free play aspect or that creativity in what they're doing all the time, to give them that kind of like backyard free play feeling. Those have been the best, I think, that I've seen that the kids have enjoyed the most. So.
Yeah. And I think, another good book recommendation there from Coach Clute there, Raise Your Game, Coach Svedinson in the Central Zone. Shout out to him for that recommendation as well. One thing I'll add to that for Jimmy and for everyone else in terms of favorite drills, I think Ian just said it. It really sparked the thought for me as he said it at the end there that, that kind of free play type of environment, right? One of the things that's really important, I think, for everyone to understand from the science of teaching, that play is the highest form of research that any athlete and student can engage in, right? So letting them be creative during this time as well, right? If you don't feel really tethered to things is going to help them in their development. And the same for you as a coach. I think being able to have more time to just freely think about things without the pressure of knowing that the league game is on Wednesday this week in September, and you're only focused on those tactics and trying to win the game, or anything like that, then going to that, I think, is really important. So I think that you have an opportunity and some time to really get into that play and the free flowing thinking, and getting into that zone of research, which I think is wildly important. And again, last thing I'll say there is that one of our mottos in ODP, which should be a motto for all of us, is that we value the technical over the tactical. And right now, since you cannot work on the tactical, right, it really gives you the chance to focus on that technical, right? As we keep going, but you can't focus fully on the tactical, but you can spend more time there. And on that tactical, you can spend your time on video or on dry land, right? And on those things, but not necessarily given all the attention that you usually give to the technical skills. So, Ian, over to you.
My last thing for kind of going through the app is there's 2 more updates that are going to come out in the next week. We talked about the books. So there's going to be a section in the app of book lists as well. And they'll be kind of organized into, team and culture and season planning and some things like that as well for those resources. So aggregating a little bit more of that we have in the manual, but also putting it right at everyone's fingertips as well. A couple touches away in the app for everyone. And then the last thing, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about it, was just bringing everyone's attention to kind of where our athletes are at mentally and their mental states. And I've been doing a lot of reading, and BA can speak, I'm sure, ad nauseum about this, but, I've been doing a lot of reading on our youth sport age athletes, so essentially 6 to 18. And I've seen varying numbers in it, but anywhere from 40 to 60% is the average that I'm seeing are suffering from some form of depression in this time. And so I want to bring everyone's attention to that as we're getting back in the water and whatever that capacity is, as you're engaging your athletes over Zoom and whatever those capacities are, that we are conscious of that, right? I have a rule in our club that you have to say every kid's name 3 times throughout that practice, no matter what. So they're feeling engaged and involved in what's going on normally. And I would say almost double that in today's environment as well. This is the only, for some of them, most of them, this is the only outlet socially that they have that actually involves human interaction, right? Not over, DMs or not over text messages or, chatting while playing a video game on Xbox or whatever it is, right? Like these are the visual interactions they have that they actually want to engage in. Over our full shutdown period, we stopped doing any water polo evaluations or technical tactical video after about 2 months, and did all fun and games, right? We did all like Uno nights and poker nights and trivia and things like that with all of our kids to try to give them a little bit more of that outlet. And then now that we're in the water, it becomes very natural to come back to that, like, we're going to grind, we're going to get after it, we're going to go hard, we're going to, be super gnarly on every kid. And I would challenge everyone to build in some of that social time. And that social time is going to look different for every age group, right? Our 10 and under social time looks a lot like their normal practices. They don't have really carved out social time. That would be very different than what they're doing normally. They're always playing games, and everything is kind of an interaction for them. But your 18s and your 16s might look a little different when you're talking about that. And so one of the things that we've done is we've built in some extra time in some of the swim sets so they can engage with each other on the wall. They can talk to the guy next to them or across to them. And then we're asking all of our coaches to always walk around the pool deck and take some of that time as well to engage with them. Right? We're not getting those normal coaching interactions or normal chances to check in throughout the day, right? Throughout the weekend at team lunches and dinners and things like that. And so giving them that opportunity for connection is really important, because the stuff that these kids are going through right now, the effect that it's having on them, right? Like words, unfortunately, like depression, get thrown out and often disregarded as like not being realistic. But I can tell you firsthand that the things that these kids are going through right now and the feelings that they have and the differing emotions and the abilities to deal with them, it's really tough, right? And we pride ourselves as coaches and educators a lot of the time in being the ones that get to actually see them the first, more than their parents see them, right? Have more chances to interact and engage them. And frankly, are the first ones that they see when they get out of school usually too, right? And so we have a great ability to impact their lives in that way. And so I just, in the complete coaching circle, right, I challenge everyone to find more ways to engage their athletes. I'm not saying miss practice time, right? I'm not saying get in 30 minutes late because you're going to let your whole 1600 girls team get you into a sidetrack topic. But I am saying find a way to give them some social interaction and engage with them the entire time, because we're not even aware of the repercussions that we're going to be feeling from this time mentally moving forward and for a long time. So
it's a really good point, Ian.
Sorry, and in that same dialogue, there's going to be, in next week's update, there are going to be talks that Brian Alexander has had with our national pipeline teams. So there's 6 talks that are going up starting next week, and some of them include inner dialogue and self-awareness, team culture and emotional intelligence, and resilience and reset routines. And so again, this is him talking to our pipeline levels, our complete pipeline levels, so about 100 athletes in each of them for this cycle, boys and girls, youth, all the way down to development. But again, these are all really pertinent topics, and I would more than challenge you, right, to go ahead and open up these conversations with your athletes, among many of the other difficult conversations that are out there right now to be having, and open up and have these conversations and start, because to assume that they're having them in their families is not a good assumption or a safe assumption, right? To go ahead and make sure that we're opening these up as mentors and leaders of young men and women is really vital for all of us to be doing moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's just really crucial, Ian. I can't echo that more loudly than what you just said, right? I mean, that's really really vital, and we will have those Brian Alexander talks up, which I think were really crucial, like Ian said. In the meantime, that'll be up very soon. If you go to, again, sharing my screen, and again, amazing 76 people still on the call and still engaged in the conversation. We're happy to keep going if we have questions and topics to keep going. Under mental game, if you go to the coach lecture series here and under mental game, there's some good quality coaching stuff. Chris Snyder is the coaching education director at the United States Olympic Committee. And there's the mental skills talk here with Brian Alexander, with myself and Brian. I think we will reframe that, but that one that's up there now is a little more for parents. It's a talk that we gave for parents there. So a lot of times Ian made a lot of great points in what you just talked now, but said something, we can't assume that these conversations are also happening at home. And a lot of times you want to ask how to engage your parents into these conversations. One way would be to share this talk with your parents, and then if they didn't attend in the past, it's a way to get the parents engaged there. And I think that's another place that I think this will be important. If you go back to the front page of the app, or the website, however you want to look at all these resources, if you scroll down, one thing we forgot to mention as well, there is a USOPC, now the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. All of their resources are also available here. They provide resources from the Olympic level that come up, and some of them are free, some free courses, that you can take online with them. They have other coaching resources that can come in, and some of those are mental skills that can come in. And so these are some other mental skill resources that are available for everybody. There's great nutrition stuff here too. If we talk about like mental health has a lot to do with physical health as well, which is why we're all advocating to try to get back in our pools at the same time and have this and as we work into it. But some great healthy recipes and different things you can share with them. One thing that I'm working on through the racial equity task force that we've started and that we're working on is I want to create a one-sheeter for everybody to be able to give back to their athletes, particularly athletes that come from less socioeconomic means along the way, that they can have proper Olympic level nutrition and fueling for under $5 a day, right? So what can be done? Can you access the same level of nutrition that our Olympians and professional athletes are doing at an affordable rate on a daily basis? And you guys will find, and most of you know that peanut butter and jelly is still being used by most NBA teams, most Olympic gold medal athletes. Bananas, peanut butter and jelly, really simple things that can be very affordable as well and accessible. But maybe our athletes don't see them in that light, that they're also being used at the highest levels to keep themselves healthy, physically, mentally, spiritually, as we kind of motivationally as we get through all this. So really, really important points by Ian there as we're talking. Drew, you talk a lot about the character developing. You also talked about the Coach Academy. Going back to Coach Academy, one of the things that we do there, I think not everybody knows. Let's talk about when we go to Coach Academy. That's at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And maybe just really briefly, and we'll get to it because I want to ask another question afterwards. Some of the framework that goes into that Coach Academy was our inaugural one, and the framework of leadership and teaching that we start with.
Great question. So kind of the history of it, we finished our second year at Coach Academy this past, so 2019. And that looked drastically different than the first one. And really the drive was to have an in-person multi-day training for coaches to not just get exposure to like tactical stuff or technical stuff, but also to just get this idea of bringing mentor coaches in and other, not necessarily high-level coaches, just experienced people that can share knowledge on the wide range of things that we have to be proficient at to be effective coaches. And, I think there's this desire to focus sometimes, if we're not careful, and I know just speaking for myself, the sexy stuff of the passing and the shooting and the technical things and the tactical things. And I forget sometimes about that I'm an educator, I'm a teacher when I'm a coach. And so we take dives into that, and we hopefully, coaches that are on the call that have been there, hopefully feel like they leave with really good resources to continue their growth in that area alongside the tactical stuff. I mean, last year I referenced Coach Flax. We were lucky enough to have him out there as a guest coach, as a mentor coach. And he would lead skills and drills in the pool with a small group of athletes where coaches could video and ask questions and these types of things. But he was also in the classroom talking about practice planning and the attention to detail and the amount of time it goes into putting together this experience for athletes to learn, creating an environment for learning.
Yeah. Ian, Drew was also fortunate enough and blessed enough to have the birth of one of his children during that time. So Ian physically led the training there. And again, I can't wait to get back to Colorado Springs and do this in person again, because it's a wonderful and inspirational place to be. But in the meantime, we will try to host a virtual one this winter, like we talked about. But maybe, Ian, you can highlight some of those major topics that you went over when you were in person. But I think this is a tool that we want to continue to expand upon in years to come.
Yeah, definitely. So we focused on the technical and the tactical stuff that I think everyone is expecting at some kind of clinic like that, where talked about counterattacking the front court, some goalie training, and front court offense, 6-on-5, 5-on-6, all of those. And then in addition to that, and some of the stuff that we took some really great deep dives into, being an effective coach, creating your own coaching foundation and building your coaching foundation, really looking into practice planning right? Really looking into creating a season plan versus a daily plan versus a year plan, and how to kind of align those things based off what your years look like, or how much time that you're going to get with your groupings of athletes. Also looking at culture and culture creation and culture building, and best practices from sports all over the world. From the All Blacks in New Zealand, right? New Zealand, All Blacks, all the way to our own Team USA women's program with AK and all in between them. Best practices and things that they've found work, and us kind of working through all those great cultural things, and really just trying to find ways to put the building the person over the player, right? And really trying to hit home on that for our coaches, right? Building themselves as more gritty coaches, right? And finding ways for us to develop more gritty athletes. As we're looking at all the things that we do, we find a lot of connection between great players who found a lot of success and their ability to overcome adversity when it hits, how they internalize it, how they work through it, and how they pick themselves back up after failure. And a lot of that kind of comes back to being a little bit more gritty, which is a term that obviously gets thrown around a lot these days. It's been pretty popularized. And so looking at ways like that to help kind of create those connections, focusing on the person there versus just necessarily focusing on the player.
Yeah. It's a really good point. Some exciting stuff coming in. Got a couple of questions about new rules, and how these things all help with the new rules. We can address that. And as I just put in the chat, any last questions before we wrap up here? Happy to discuss. We do not expect to go this long, but we're fired up about this. I know Ian and Drew, like we all do this as part of, we all have other jobs and other things that we do, but coach education is a passion of ours, and we're excited to keep answering questions, keep the conversation going. And this will be, another question came in. If this will be, I'll try to spend some time tonight archiving this online as well, and having it available on the app for everybody there. Also follow us if you haven't yet followed us on Twitter, right? At USAWP Coaches Ed on Twitter. We'll constantly put the coach education stuff up on there. If you can put on there, Ian, also the Twitter handle, that'd be great. I missed that. That'd be cool. For everyone to have the Twitter handle, that's where we'll send a lot of the Coach Academy stuff out on, and other things as they come up. So when it comes to the new rules, I've had a lot of experience with this in the last couple of years with the testing and then the implementation worldwide. I think the bottom line is, when in terms of these drills as they relate to the new rules, is that any of the new rules as they come into the game, and I don't think any of them are really radical or revolutionary by any means, but the overriding philosophy has been to promote more movement in the game and get back to allowing a more free-flowing game. So when your technical skills are better, you're going to be able to adjust to the new rules a lot better as well. Because if you're a proficient swimmer, you're a proficient shot blocker, you're proficient over your hips, you have a great relationship and fluidity in the water, that's going to help no matter what. And I think the new rules help promote this technical skill development and rewards technical skill development above and beyond those things. So having the ability to react, to read, and the wisdom and the kind of wits that all three of us mentioned at one point here, being savvy, smarter players by watching the games and watching what's happening. So if you're able to take a direct shot after meeting yourself live outside of 6 meters, as opposed to being very direct, saying it's at the 5 meter line, right, and you foul and shoot here outside of 6 meters, you can get live. Now you can be active and play. Being able to get live or shoot directly from the 2 meter line off of corner throws, right, that's going to require goalies and everyone to be more aware and to be engaged in the game. So I think just in general, this lends itself well. JP put in the Q&A about a drill that he runs, for the 6 meter rule, about runaway pressure with the ball, right? It's a good one, runaway pressure, and then putting it back in the water on the whistle, swimming with the ball, kind of coming back. That's a good one to do off the wall or on the wall, or on the wall or away from the wall. That helps in the drill. So thanks, JP, for that, being able to go back and forth. You also mentioned wall drills, which are incorporated. Coach Davidson came up with some great what we call wall drills, being able to go over the wall to be able to shot block and return to the wall. All of those are highlighted on the app as well, and we reported with Olympians in the past. So thanks, JP, for that, and everybody, and excited that the new rules will be helpful. Again, not radical, but helpful, that we're emphasizing what we're trying to teach here in America, which is this greater focus on the technical skills and technical development. So that's it in terms of questions. They've dried up. Check the chat there for contact information, Twitter handles. Appreciate everybody being around. We'll archive this soon, and we're all here trying to get better at getting better, and we can do that together, right? So I think that's our plan. Thank you, Ian, for the videos and sharing the privilege that you have had being in the pool with your groups, right? And that's using your privilege wisely and sharing that with the rest of us, and hopefully we all get the opportunity to do that. Drew, your leadership overseeing all this has been excellent as well. So thank you guys. Appreciate it. Stay tuned for the next iterations, next webinars, next app updates, and all that we're doing.
Hey, I just want to plug in, I know I work at high school, so we have high school starting up, and so days will get a little busier, but email me please. And, I can give you my cell phone number. I don't know if it's good to give it out now, but email me and we can chat on the phone, or we can Zoom, or, I have every resource that I have that's not been added to the app or things like that, that's public facing. I'll share with whomever. So there's no secrets. Coaches say that a lot, and some don't mean it, but I mean, I think everyone on this call mean it, no secrets.
Yeah, that's a good one. Last question there, Rudy just threw one in. I'll say this is actually, in terms of streamlining the new rules, before we hang up, the good news is that this has happened. So I want to say that NFHS, NCAA, and USA Water Polo, once we're back into competition, will all be implementing the vast majority of the new rules together. This is the most streamlined the rule book has ever been for high school, college, and USA Water Polo that we'll have ever seen. So it'll be the first time that all have 6-meter lines together, as opposed to different, you don't have to change your cone. So it's there, and trying to navigate 4 if you count FINA, governing bodies to agree on all the rules has always been a difficult challenge. And so I'm actually really excited about that for our athletes as they move forward. A few differences here and there when it comes to being able to do the live substitutions. Most pools won't allow that, so you won't see that on the NCAA or the high school level, and so that won't be there. Same with the 20-second shot clock. I think is going to take us some time to get the equipment all lined up in America to be ready to make that a streamlined approach. So you won't see those two across the board, as they'll take a little more time and infrastructure, but everything else we're good to go. So it is a little bit of a renaissance to circle back to the beginning of education, rules, and sport development. Thanks again, everybody. We'll be in touch again soon, and hopefully take care of yourselves and your family. Be safe, everybody out there. So thanks again, Drew and Ian.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.